by Stirling Brig, Wallace lay a-hiding as the English host frae the south come riding down the river Forth. Atween them baith was roaring, ne'er were the sides, oh, the brig o' Stirling. Watching frae the wood, Wallace and the Murray, as the English cam wi' the yellow Surrey. Ain by ain they crossed, oh, the brig was billin', still they onward cam.
Hi guys, what is going on, and welcome back to another video on Conqueror's Blade. So, back to the Houndsmen. We actually did a video on these pretty much when they came out right at the start. But I wanted to kind of visit them again after a little bit more time, and I had a few more games with them, get them sort of unlocked a little bit more and test around with them a little bit. Because actually I'm really enjoying these as a unit, and actually they play really nicely. And for me, much more like a musket unit. I guess we'll get onto this a little bit later on, but if you've watched sort of my playstyle on musket units tends to be very aggressive, and I kind of tend to play this unit in the same way, very much as a front line archer unit. Anyway, let's have a quick look at the veterancy lines. There's basically two real options to go for. One of them is sort of a slight increase to hounds, which is basically the bottom line, and then you've got the top line, which is basically the increase to the archers. And I think both are viable lines. It depends kind of what you prefer, but for me, I think the archers are kind of the better part of the unit. The hounds are good. I like them. They can be really useful in some circumstances. But for me, I like the archers. I think they're actually a really nice archer unit, and the bleed is really nice, and the accuracy and the rate of fire, etc, etc, etc. So, for me, I've been going down the top line, which makes them have fairly decent stats. Things like the piercing AP. We'll come on to some of the doctrines I'm running, which do make a difference, but we've got just over that 1500, trying to get that up so that the base damage of the archers is actually pretty reasonable. And that combined with a 1400 piercing damage makes them pretty nice. And then you're stacking on some pretty hefty amount of bleed, and they can be an effective unit. They aren't very tanky, obviously, as you'd expect from an archer unit. With only 3200 hit points, you know, they're not a tercio. So they are a bit fragile on the front line, but you can use those dogs to kind of get in the way of stuff. Abilities-wise, you basically have two archers' abilities. The hobbling shot is the only sort of focus fire ability that you get to get them to target a specific area. You know, it will give you an aiming circle, as we'll see when we get into some of the clips. But it also causes a slow effect, and if you combine that then with the dogs as well, it basically causes like a root. And then you get hunting stance, which is where they basically load 3 arrows into their bow at once and fire 3 in very sort of rapid fire succession. It can be quite nice. It works quite nicely, does a bit of bleed. And actually, just their base arrow attack is really quite nice. And then, of course, you also get a charge for the dogs as well, which can send them sort of lunging over at the enemies. In terms of doctrines, my only unit, I think that's full purple. But purple piercing armor penetration. AP is really important on this unit, which is why I've gone for it, to give them that base damage, because otherwise you sort of much lower you into the sort of mid 1400s, and you'll find that base damage starts to drop off then against tier 4 and tier 5 units. And while at 1500 you're still going to be struggling against tier 5, you at least got a bit of a fighting chance. Beyond that, we go a little bit more piercing armor penetration with an archery doctrine 2, plus the extra 100 piercing damage, a flat 100 piercing damage buff with the archery doctrine 4. I went for the increased bleed damage. Your other options are the hunters take reduced damage by 10%, but realistically they're so fragile that to me it didn't really seem to make much odds. Or you go on for the increased effect from the Loyal Hounds, but for me the dogs aren't the main part of the unit, so that extra bleed damage is really nice. And of course a little bit of extra ammo, because they do fire pretty quickly, and in prolonged engagements that's really nice to have. But anyway, enough waffle from me. Let's get into a battle. Let's see what we can do with them and see if we can gnarl someone to death with our dogs. So we dive straight into combat on Lindru Fortress. Enemy started to make a little bit of a push on the supply point wall. So I thought, well, get nice and close, up and personal, just throw the dogs straight in. As I said, I like to use this as a close range unit. And that longsword got in a bit easier than I thought he was going to. But we got him in the end, so it doesn't really matter. And we didn't lose any of our actual archers, just a little bit of damage. And this is how I use the unit. I don't know if it's necessarily the right way to use the unit, but I put them as close as I can and kind of just use a combination of the dogs Sometimes the hobbling shot and a little bit of the sort of triple shot, just to really deal with everything that comes, particularly when you've got support like this. And if you'll see, I'm really not that worried about the enemies coming up the walls. Is what I'm worried about is the trebs. And that's what I'm watching out for, really, because pushing up those ladders as the enemies were there, I can't believe they didn't sort of try and get a treb on me. That's what I thought was going to happen. So that's where I was watching. But anyway, they pushed up with a reasonable mix of stuff there. Grabbed herself a hero kill. Herself about 25 unit kills. I think there's a few berserkers and stuff in there as well. So, yeah, pretty pleased with that. Decent start to the game. A couple of condos snuck around the back, but actually by the time we get there, blast a few shots in, they're actually all really dead anyway. So, we're back to A. A's being capped already. That's really where we've got to get to. Moving along the ground. A few enemies coming in at the gates, which, unfortunately for them, get really absolutely slaughtered without really being able to do very much. Have a little quick pop at the poleaxe dancing around in the gateway. Slightly injure his horse, but really not achieving a great deal. So again, back really to my close range gameplay. You know, we're a few minutes away, get to the top, a few meters away even, and just blasting the dogs straight in, and then we're just using the archers at very close range. Managed to avoid that treb through no real skill of my own, but just a little bit of luck. And really just doing the same thing. I'm trying to look really to position myself where I'm just near friendly forces. Just making sure there that the enemies aren't going to come up the stairs immediately behind me, because that's the biggest threat. And as they start to move up, I reposition myself. So that's how you could use them close range. Luckily we also missed the treb, but really that's how I use them close range, is just keeping good awareness. If the enemy's starting to manoeuvre behind you, then move, take advantage of that. And actually now they've thrown themselves on that stairs, I'm going to be a real arsehole and just go around the back and shoot them in the back. And in this sort of situation it's really easy to deal with. Send the dogs in. They cry and come for me, but to be honest, they're so slowed down by the dogs, I'm happy to go up. The dual blade tries to go for me, but it just costs him his life. There's too many arrows going down a too small a place to really be a problem. And that takes us up to almost 50 kills. That's why the unit can be effective. Use them close, just be aggressive with them. And if you die, you die. Doesn't really matter. But that's how I use them, anyway. So I send them back to the supply point. Get a little bit of ammo, heal up a few of the dogs. Needed a bit of a heal myself, and there's a little bit of a sort of a lull in the fighting on the A point, so I'm happy to send them back, get them rearmed, get them rehealthed, we can kind of go from there. I then decide that I'll perhaps just go round and go up to the other side gate. Thought I'd have a quick check of the wall, make sure there's no one pushing up, but I'm going to push down and basically through in front of the A gate and then kind of up to the other side gate, because there's a little bit of fighting going on over there, and if there's a bit of an opportunity to kind of get access on the flats, then that could be kind of a good little spot to go. So we come around this way, not really a lot going on. And no real enemies pushing in through the gateway. But talking to the guy I'm in the group with, there's a little bit of stuff still around there. So I'm half conscious that we may get something coming through shortly. Also kind of conscious that they may push A, but since there don't really seem to be many of them up there and the enemies are starting to mount, we come round. That was a very brave dual blades. As I pop the unit round though, there's some tertios around that corner. As my teammate just found out. So we reposition ourselves sort of a little bit further back so we can cover the gateway without being in range of the tertio. And as they start to push those fortebraccios in, then really it's just easy archer damage, isn't it? We can shoot in, using my hunting shots to get all that bleed damage in. Managed to get ourselves a random hero kill. I don't even know who that was we killed. But these Houndsmen slaughter heroes. The only problem in this case is that because I'm a little bit too close, it's triggering the dogs, and I don't really want to do that. They've now brought shields up, which also makes things a little bit harder. And if I use my hobbling shots here, then basically it'll send the dogs in, which is why I'm sort of trying to refrain from using it. As they push in, I think I'm going to get pushed, so I start to make a little bit of a back off. But actually they come through and wheel round, so it puts me, they're back to me basically. So now I'm prepared to use the hobbling shots, let the dogs go in anyway, then as they get close, put the charge in on them. And then we can just keep shooting in the back. And the amount of damage we're doing now is really quite intense. Going for our triple shots, picking up the kills, picking up the damage. Tried to get charged by an enemy unit of Fortebraccio, that tier 4 pike unit. Slaughtered. Able to use our hero and the archers to keep them down. Enemy poleaxe does get amongst the unit, causes some damage, but the unit's really able to deal with him quite effectively. And we can just keep ploughing arrows into the enemy formation and really take a lot of them down. So up to sort of 70 kills, 70, 80 kills, as well as I think 3 or 4 enemy hero kills now, I think we're up to. And we pull back towards the supply point. The unit definitely needs a little bit of healing here, and we've got quite a lot of stuff pushing up, so we're under a relative amount of threat, so we need to try and get ourselves back to a little bit of safety and a little bit more health. Dogs are pretty much all gone by this point, but actually there's still a chunk of the archers left alive, still an effective unit's worth, so it's still worth trying to keep these guys going. Get them back to the supply point. They're now starting to heal up, as the enemy is starting to push through a little bit there, and our team is actually engaging them down here. It took me a while to realise. So I move up, go for a little bit of a hobbling shots, a little bit better focused fire at range. You can see start to get some decent damage in really quite easily, even from this sort of distance. Go for our triple shots, and since I thought, well, I feel relatively safe back here, let's go and get stuck in with the hero. So the unit's merrily blasting on. Oh, another hero kill. Number 5, I think. Oh, number 6. These guys are just so ridiculous on the old hero kills. And number 7. Something like that. Anyway, I'm losing count. And we finish off the unit of grey hairs as well. But as they start to come up, they build themselves a mortar. And decide, yeah, don't want to play this game anymore. I've gone off it. Let's run away. Pull back round the corner to the supply point, because I don't want to go toe-to-toe with the mortar, because if it gets a direct hit on the unit, it will be quite effective. So we pull around the corner a little bit, try and reposition ourselves, since we've actually got a chunk of team here as well. And we've got some down, you know, they can hold the front line pretty well. And we've got another unit with his dog still intact as well. So anyway, as a bit of a fight starts to develop, I'm kind of wanting this fight, really. It seems like a good bit of potential, getting some musket bombs. And then actually, we get some of these pipe militia coming in. I can reposition myself, get in, start to shoot on the claymores below, which is kind of the real target here. The Treb comes in, but actually really not in a very good spot, and it misses our unit. But I unfortunately get myself killed. Ah, so annoying. But the unit does still keep fighting on, picking up more hero kills and more unit kills as we keep sort of blasting into them and trying to push them back. And the unit itself... Oh, another hero kill. It's just ridiculous. The unit itself is able to really keep fighting on. But once we clear that fight, I put them on the retreat so I can respawn with them after. A little bit later on in the fight, after we've gone through a little bit of a Sons of Fenrir phase, we pull the unit back out, what's left of them, and they are still a really effective anti-hero unit. But without going through sort of the whole battle, this is just kind of the tail end of it. But really the kind of point of this was... The unit is actually really effective. It's very effective against heroes, but it can also be really brutal against enemy units. But they're not really an archer unit. Okay, they have bows, but they play like a musket unit. And you can really be very aggressive with them. They have really good base movement speed, and that really means that they're incredibly fast and they can reposition incredibly quickly, and you can really get yourself in and out of danger quite effectively. And not to mention, while at least the dogs are still alive, if you get yourself out of position and get caught out by an enemy unit, the dogs really go a long way to holding it up, particularly if you can use it in conjunction with hobbling shots. You can basically root the enemy for at least a period of time, and it really means that they really have a hard time getting to you. And yeah, we see this unit played a bit, but I don't think people seem to, at least in random sieges, seem to see its power, because I seem to find it to be a very, very effective unit. If nothing else, at least for hero killing. I think we end up with 14 hero kills on this match with it. It's just, yeah, just kind of insane. And it just kind of shows a little bit about what that unit can do. But anyway, hopefully you've enjoyed the video. I've very much enjoyed revisiting these guys. If you did, let me know what you think in the comments down below. And of course, subscribe to the channel for lots more Conqueror's Blade content. Thanks for watching, guys. I shall see you all on the next one.